Oh boy, what have I signed myself up for?
Well, having kind of gotten into the habit of it thanks to the recent pandemic, I think I should try to do more weekly videos that I could pump out alongside my weekly Precure reviews. And people have been requesting I cover this franchise, which, considering its connections to Precure, yeah, I probably should have covered it a lot sooner.
Now don't worry, I'm still going to do my regular longer format reviews. In fact, appropriately enough, I figured now would be a good time as any to wrap up my review of the Behold Sky manga because, get it? Witches and all that? Yeah, you get it.
So, what are these self-proclaimed bothersome witches? Well, Ojamajo Doremi was credited as the first creation of Izumi Todo, a person who's probably really good friends with Saburo Yatsude, or Hate, whichever way you want to pronounce that kanji.
Doesn't really matter because neither one of them actually exists.
Yeah, in spite of what Akiba Ranger might have you believe, Saburo Hate is the pen name for the collection of producers behind Super Sentai's creation. Same applies to Todo, with their name just being a play on Toei Animation's original name Toei Doga for the surname, and Izumi coming from Oizumi Studios, the property they bought and then eventually turned into their animation studios. But yeah, they all came together to produce a very successful magical girl franchise that lasted for 201 TV episodes. Yes, one more than a certain other toy magical girl property. Its ratings and toy sales did inevitably decline, as any long-running series would, though as far as I can tell, it wasn't disastrous or anything. Regardless, Todo decided to move on and use that time slot for a certain other series that they only really intended to make a couple of course worth of episodes for, but yeah, those plans kind of changed.
I don't know whether or not we would have gotten more Doremi had Precure not taken off, but really, at this point, I doubt we'll ever get a full-on revival.
As I do think it ran its course, and it unfortunately didn't catch on here in the States, having only lasted like half a year due to poor ratings.
Part of it might have been because they left it in the hands of a certain company.
Though to be fair, Saturday morning cartoon blocks were on their last spreads in the early to mid 2000s, and Magical Girl series had lost their appeal here, so it probably never stood a chance in the first place.
And honestly, I think that's for the best, because while I haven't seen all 201 episodes, from what I can tell, Doremi ended amicably.
So, aside from a few sequel light novels and anniversary movies that unfortunately are being delayed due to the pandemic, I see no reason to waste a perfectly good retirement bow. Right, Shawn Michaels?
But yeah, with all that said, while I don't think a revival is necessary, especially if it's coming from Toei, I also don't think this franchise should just fade away into obscurity, which I am afraid might be a very real possibility.
Great, kind of revolutionary aspects of this show are being forgotten, or at least not being acknowledged, and again, it was undeniably an important stepping stone that would lead to the creation of the franchise I cover on a weekly basis. As such, much like how Kamen Rider and Super Sentai can coexist nowadays, in spite of the latter kind of sinking the former for about a decade, I think I should do the same with these two franchises through my reviews.
So, starting next Wednesday, look forward to one episode reviews of at least the first 13 episodes of this franchise.
Depending on the reception of these videos, I might continue with this franchise or move on to something else. We'll see how it works out. I still consider this to be in the experimental phase.
Also, just so that we're clear, I was writing the script for this video right before that out of nowhere cameo happened, the latest episode of Healing Good, and also gave me some good material for my thumbnail.
Anyway, to close out this little intro video, why don't we also learn a little bit more about this first season staff and even some of their connections to Precure. Aside from Hate 2.0, this season was co-directed by Junichi Sato and Takuya Igarashi. Sato pretty much requires no introduction, as along with co-directing Hakuto with Akifumi Sako, he could be seen as one of the forefathers of magical girl anime in general, having directed Sailor Moon for its first 2 seasons, and also the first half of one of my favorite series of all time, Kaleido Star. Similarly, Igarashi got his big breakthrough Sailor Moon, ironically on the opposite end from Sato, by directing its final season. He also directed Ouran High, Soul Eater, and all 3 seasons of Bungo Stray Dogs so far. No notable precure roles, though he did pretty much become the main director of this franchise after Sato left following the first season, and now is returning for that anniversary movie I mentioned. Takashi Yamada was the head writer for this whole franchise, though he would go under the pen name of Midori Kuriyama for this, plus Heartcatch, where he was also the head writer for both that and its accompanying movie.
So yeah, in case you ever wondered why these shows seem so similar, aside from the Yoshihiko Umekoshi designs, there's your answer.
As for why exactly he went under a pen name for magical girl anime specifically, in spite of having a respectively long tenure in Toei writing for Kamen Rider Black, RX, and the Metal Heroes franchise, I'm not completely sure. Maybe he just found his name to be a little bit too plain, since it is basically the John Doe of Japan.
Honestly, I'm just amazed at how flexible of a writer he is. Again, he wrote for one of the most acclaimed and mature Kamen Rider series ever, as well as the Fatal Fury movies. Yeah, don't ask me how all this connects back to magical girls.
Other notable precure writers on the show included Atsushi Maekawa, who I brought up as the head writer of Fresh back in that review, and Yumi Kageyama, who wrote a bunch of episodes for both of the OG seasons. Other writers whom I'm a fan of on a personal basis at least include Akatsuki Yamatoya, who was the head writer for Soul Eater, and Gintama's first 265 episodes.
And yet, amazingly, managed to maintain his sanity.
Genki Yoshimura, the head writer of Digimon Adventure 02, yeah, I know that show had its problems, but his episodes featuring Ken were amazing. And Reiko Yoshida, whom I'm guessing came as a package deal with Sato, as she was the head writer of Kaleidostar. And while she might not have been the head writer of a Digimon series, she did write some of the most important films for that franchise. Yes, basically all of the ones that were used in that movie, and I will thank you not to remind me of that chop job. Moving on to animation, art direction was headed by Shinzo Yuki, who has also done the same for every Precure series until Fresh, including all of their accompanying films until Deluxe 1, followed by a little background art for Smile and Doki Doki. Notable animation directors for individual episodes include Akira Inagami, whose work for Precure honestly is too much for me to list here, so instead, I'll just point out that he's done key animation for a lot of films, in particular DBZs, so yeah, that should give you a good idea of the quality of his work. Hiroyuki Kawano, who's also done a lot of work. In particular, he created arguably the best sequences in Kira Kira. This Bibli animation is kind of ironic for reasons I'll get to next week. Toshie Kawamura, who we've talked about more than once on this channel for his amazing character designs, and we can also thank him for creating some of the best sequences in the All-Stars films. And Yoshihiko Umekoshi, who I already mentioned was also the character designer for this show, and yet surprisingly, he only worked on the animation for about 3 episodes of this season, as opposed to the extended work he did for Heartcatch. They would thankfully use him more in later seasons, but come on guys, when you have somebody that talented, you should use him a little more than, say, Mitsuru Aoyama, whom I can never seem to escape whenever I do these reviews.
All in all though, this first season had very solid staff with some Toei Animation's very best.
Several of them would play major parts in arguably some of the most important seasons of the Precure franchise, be it the one that rescued them from cancellation, one of the most acclaimed series, and yeah, while I have my problems with it, I'm not going to pretend like Hakuto wasn't a very profitable season at least. While this franchise did end up giving its time slot to it and would eventually fade into the shadow of Precure, I think now more than ever we should appreciate it and maybe bring it a little bit back more into relevance.
With that in mind, I'll see you guys here back next week for episode 1 of the original Ojamajo Doremi. And until then though, farewell for now my friends and excuse me. Yes? Wait, you're Izumi Toto? Oh, and you're not all that happy of me making fun of you and Hate,